This whole conversation about passing and, whether or not it is a burden or a privilege, I don't want to speak for both of you, but I think we can say that it's both, and maybe in different ratios for different people and frankly, different ratios for different days. But ultimately, it brings me to the idea of how important is it to you to stay connected to some of these like unused identities? Nate, I mean, if you are in a monogamous marriage with a man, does it matter that you're still attracted to women? And Helen, I mean, that same other side, I know you said you were maybe monogamish or on a more soft monogamy, but how relevant, how important is it to your lives to hold on to these things or to stay connected to that queerness?
Well, for me, I'm very lucky because my partner is very open to my bisexuality, and one of the wonderful things about it is that we get to look at women together, and be like, oh, I tap that, we talk about our sexual fantasies with one another, and it's very freeing to have that open conversation because he is fully accepting of who I am as a person. So I don't have to hide it. I don't have to make him feel, okay, by being bisexual because, of the trust and love that we have for one another. But so that can be wonderful. And I think that, for, someone that is, lives in this space and is part of who I am, that it can be very wonderful to have a partner that is very accepting of your sexuality, that you can watch porn together, and get something out of it. And, you can share your sexual fantasies, you can express these parts of yourself and not feel like, you're taking anything away from your relationship. And I think that's really important in any type of relationship that you have, that you can express those sexual desires and fantasies that you have in a safe space. And that's one of the most important things, I think, that so I don't feel for myself that I don't feel like there's something wrong with me in my relationship. Because I do have these desires, I can talk about them, and my husband's like, awesome, cool, great, this is wonderful, and I think that's really important in any relationship to talk. If no matter what your relationship looks like, you should be able to talk about your sexual desires, your fantasies, the things you would like to try, whether it be kink or having a threesome or whatever it is, that you're able to talk about it, because then, especially when you're in a monogamous relationship, that you still can express that part of yourself, even if it's only like talking about it in bed when you're having sex. At least you're able to get it out of yourself and you don't have to hide it.
It's a good point. I think that's a big key to a long-term relationship, is being able to be honest with your partner and, like, say, hey, I'd hit that. I'd hit that too. Right. And it's not like you're going to run out and do it. It's just recognizing that other people are still attractive and not being intimidated or threatened by that. Right. And then it kind of helps to foster a much deeper connection. For my part, I don't miss the charade of being straight. I don't miss that at all. I'm much happier now that I'm honest with people in my lives and I'm honest with myself. It's a much better way to live your life. It's so much more fulfilling. Sure. And I still do get I get a lot of the straight culture, and my partner is very gay, so I get a lot of the gay stuff too. So I'm not missing out on that, believe me.
Sure. Well, are there practices then? I mean, Nate, it sounds like you've got your bases covered, just living in a very straight world in a lot of ways. But do either of you have maybe strategies or routines or just different ways to affirm some of these adjectives or some of these labels about yourself that maybe don't get used very often?
Yeah, I mean, I don't get really too hung up on the labels, like I just kind of live my life and I am who I am. Like I was saying earlier, my sexuality is such a small part of who I am. There's so much more to me than who I sleep with. So it doesn't affect my day-to-day life really at all, except for maybe when somebody sees my hot pink hard hat or hears me use the he pronoun when referring to my partner, and then it comes up. But again, it's usually a pretty short conversation, and they're usually just like, oh, okay, cool, okay, I'm gonna go back to work now, okay, bye. What do you think, Helen?
Yeah, I'm not really too concerned with label, because I'm very lucky, because my chosen family is good portion of us are bi, or like sexual freaks, or whatever you want to call it. So, so we are pretty open with each other, and we express our feelings and desires pretty openly. So it's not something I'm really concerned with. And I'm not going to talk. I work in an office. Like, I'm not talking about my sexuality and my sexual activities with my coworkers and stuff like that. Like, no. Like, I'm not friends with you, so you don't need to know that. They know that I'm married and I have 2 kids. That's all you need to know. Sure. After that, we're done. And I've kind of developed that that I know that I am performing straight. So I can be a little bit more selective about who I let people know about my sexuality and my sexual activities and things like that. And like I said before, I do recognize that as a privilege, because I don't have to have uncomfortable conversations with people if I don't want to. If you're trans or gay, or you're non-binary, if you are 100% queer, and this is who you are going to have difficult conversations. You're going to have to educate people. You're going to deal with bigotry and all this type of bullshit, and I understand that, because I can navigate this space, I don't have to have those conversations if I don't want to. And I understand that it is not fair, and I don't think it's fair, but I have to recognize that I do kind of get a little bit of that privilege, because I am bi and I'm in a, monogamous straight relationship for the most part. So, and I can understand that on the opposite end, it can be a little bit frustrating for people, that don't get to do that, and or get weird looks if they say they're with, like, a same-sex partner, and I can understand that it can be a little bit daunting. I'm like, can't you just accept it? Like, like, you set the straights, like, why do I have to educate you?
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and it is a privilege to be able to go under the radar. That's kind of why I started, with the pink hard hat and everything, is because I feel like somebody who, I'm not really adverse to talking to a bigot if someone has problem, or is giving me dirty looks. I'd be like, do I owe you money or something, bud? Or like, so as as somebody with broad shoulders who is comfortable confronting that and having awkward conversations, and dealing with that, I feel like it's kind of my duty to help normalize it and help people join the 21st century if they're not already here. And I think it's working. I get, like I said earlier, I get much more positive response than I do negative, but I still do get the occasional asshole.
Fair to say, even in a monogamous relationship, I guess.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Even in Canada, we still have those types up here.
Fair to say. Well, is it important to either of you to stay connected to a community that reflects your identity? I mean, if you don't necessarily have a lot of these like practices to affirm these parts of your identity, do you stay in touch with folks that maybe do share that, or that it can maybe help remind you about these pieces of yourself?
For me, very much so. Like, as a gamer, I pretty much only play with other LGBTQ people. just because, you know, game chat is a fucking swamp, man. Like it's just racial slurs and homophobic epithets, and I just can't with that. So the games I play, I actually have this little group of trans folks that I play with, and they're like, it's nice because it doesn't come up. It's not like we're talking about it constantly. It's mostly just have fun, play games, disconnect, and have a safe space for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about that. It's not like we're constantly discussing LGBTQ issues. It's kind of just a place to chill. So I kind of have that. So I'm lucky.
Yeah, I'll say for myself, it has become incredibly important to find different ways to validate some of these like maybe unused adjectives or some of these parts of myself that aren't getting stretched out all that often, and that's become like a connection to other people who share those things is a really vital part of that. I struggle to maybe explain this, especially when I see the two of you maybe don't have quite the same experience, but for the audience, it's really worth noting that huge pieces of your identity can get sort of lost or forgotten, or these muscles can kind of atrophy. That doesn't mean that you aren't still queer just because you're in a straight relationship, but you can sort of forget the significance of these kinds of things and maybe lose touch with yourself if you aren't in connection or in community. It's one of the reasons that gay, straight, or otherwise, I encourage everybody to be a little bit more open and a little bit more flexible about talking about their sexuality and sort of, you don't have to tell everybody like, oh man, my husband fucking got it yesterday. But, you know, there is value in being willing to share. I mean, yeah, depending on who you're talking to, right? But there's value in being able to share with people in your life, especially people that you're very intimate with, about, you know, the crazy games we played or the wild thing that happened to us or whatever else, so that you have that opportunity to kind of co-regulate and experience that like looking glass self. Does that resonate for either of you?
I know that for myself, that the fact that I can be open with people that I trust really helps me to like reaffirm my identity on a regular basis. You know, that I can go, you know, I can express myself openly to people that I trust and I love them and they love me. And it's very like that confirmation over and over again, you know, and I'm going to do a shout out to the ACI Discord, because that group on there, they're very queer affirming, wonderful people that you can, but like, you know, like we sometimes talk about it, but then like we also shoot the shit on a whole bunch of other things that it doesn't matter. Like Nate was saying with his gaming friends.
Yeah, which is really important. Like, I mean, I'll even say as a therapist, like, my time is very expensive in the sense that when people come to talk to me, they're spending a lot of money. And I totally get that there's like an urgency to like, let's get to it. Let's do the thing. And yet we still bullshit and we just kind of talk and get to know each other a little bit, because that's part of being a human. Like, you can't just race into the queer shit.
Right, exactly. And I think that's like you know, in any relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, you know, familial or whatever it is, you have to have that flexibility to go back and forth. Like being bi is not my entire identity. You know, I'm a multifaceted person with multifaceted interests and personality and all these different things. You know, being bi is just a small part of, you know, my identity, you know, but when I am able to express myself and talk about it openly and not get weird looks or people looking at me like, you know, I don't understand what that means. You can't make up your mind. That's another myth that I've heard before. You know, when I get to express that stuff about myself with people that I know aren't going to judge me, it is very freeing, because it just keeps affirming that, you know, for myself, that this is who I am and I don't have anything to be ashamed of, you know, because I know I'm going to be accepted, you know, and I think that's really, really important, no matter where you are, you know, you know, and if you're in the queer community or not, we just all want to be heard and accepted. And that's a really important thing that we need to start letting people, you know, just be able to express themselves and not put any judgment on them and go like, okay, you know, okay, that's fine. Are you cool? Are you a nice person? Okay, good. All right.
Fair to say.